Hi all, so it's John here for a Wednesday. It's damn cold out there, and that's part of the reason I've been a little bit spasmodic in my uploading, and I apologise for that. The other part of the reason is that, as you know, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago I was attacked, and I kind of haven't really felt up to it, if I'm being honest. I have uploaded, but you haven't seen me on screen, and thank God for that, you all saying, I reckon. Anyway, that said, you know, I just haven't really felt like it, and it's cold in my studio most of the time, and I keep having trouble with the electrics. I don't know whether the damp keeps getting into the electric box that's in my old studio and just shorten everything out, but yeah, it's all a bit of a pain in the neck, but there we go. Right, anyway, that all said, I had a really great comment from a subscriber, Cat Hooper it was. I don't know where you're from, Cat. I'm going to assume the USA for some reason. I think it's because you had .com at the end of your email address, but Cat Hooper goes as @Tiny Badger, I believe it was called. Now, Kat, thank you for your comment. I mean, what a great comment, and I'm glad that I do come across that way. I try to, but it's quite difficult when you're just talking to a camera, obviously, but I try and imagine all you guys out there, so, and I kind of talk to you, hopefully in the way I would talk to my art group. But Kat, you went on to say, or started by saying, I should say, that you wondered if you could use your Pentel harder oil pastels over the top of other oil pastels for the details. That's a great question, if I'm being honest, because there are ways, and I will be coming to that in future videos, but for today I'm going to take it at the very basics. And I'm going to go to my desk and I'm going to put some oil pastel down, and then I'm going to use oil pastel on top. Now, there are oil pastels that are on the much harder side of Pentel that actually will go over oil pastels, soft oil pastels that is, and one of them is the Koh-i-Noor. The set I have are really hard. However, they make some lovely lines. They're kind of almost like a pencil lead in some aspects. Now, I don't know if it's because they're fairly old, or whether it's because they're cold, or just because they're like that. But the Pentels are a bit softer than them, and they don't go over the softer oil pastels so well. So it's a kind of suck it and see situation. You have to work out what paper you're using, what oil pastels you're already using, what the oil pastels are that you want to put over the top, and really, is there any other ways of doing it? And that's something I'll come to in later videos. So we're going to go over at the desk. I'm going to use the Lightwish oil pastels because they are really quite soft. I love them, but I'm finding for my detailed work they're a little bit too soft for me at the moment. Having said that, I was going through a bit of painter's block when I used them. At the moment I'm doing a picture with Meaden. I'm finding them brilliant, and talking about them, they are soft, not as soft as the Lightwish, but they also have this quality that after 2 or 3 days they actually become quite dry. So if I was to use the Koh-i-Noor over the top of them, I think you could probably get details, and I'm actually going to try that because I need a lot of detail in this picture I'm now doing, and I hadn't realised until your question, if I'm being honest. Well, I had realised, it's an untruth to say I hadn't realised, it's just that I was trying to stick to the Meaden. But there we go, we're going to go at my desk, I'm going to lay some pastel down, I'm going to show you how the Pentel go over, I'm going to show you how the Koh-i-Noor go over, and then you'll decide from other oil pastels what can, what can't, and then you'll be able to make your own decisions. It depends on your paper as well, and techniques, and whether you're doing impasto, thin layers, thick layers. This is a question that could go on for literally hours, but I'm going to be very brief about it. Briefer than I've been in this introduction. Let's go then. We are then. I'm trying a different angle, as you can see. I've got my light wish oil pastels. I'm going to lay some of that on this piece of paper. And I also have the standard Pastels. Now I'm going to mention before I start that the square professional Pastels are a bit more like the Koh-i-Noor in this aspect, and that they will go over. But of course you have to test, and there's the Koh-i-Noors. These are really, really hard, but great at the same time. Right, so you can see here, right, that I was having a mess around earlier just to see what would go over and what wouldn't. This was quite soft, but had been drying for quite a while. I mean, it never dries, obviously, but it cures to a point. So you could probably get 50% dryness out of it. And I can't remember what these pastels were. But you can see I got some really sharp lines straight over the top with the Koh-i-Noors. But because this was a softer pastel, I tried a Pentel over the top, and that wouldn't actually adhere very well. Having said that, I tried an even drier oil pastel, and it seemed that because it was a darker colour, the Pentel went over, although you wouldn't get them very thin lines. But the Koh-i-Noor kind of struggled. I mean, that was a Koh-i-Noor, that was a Pentel, that was a Koh-i-Noor. So it's sort of kind of, you have to really suck it and see, to be honest with you. But let's apply some oil pastel, shall we? I'm going to apply quite a light shade, and hopefully that'll give you some idea of what could happen. So I'm going to lay it lightly. The thicker you lay it, the more trouble you're going to have. And of course, things like temperature make a vast difference. It's not cold in my studio at the moment, but it's not the warmest either. So I'm just going to blend that down. This is a thin layer. You can see it's thin because I've got paper showing through already. Now let's see what goes on top of that, shall we? Right, let's get a Pentel oil pastel. Now, lighter colours are not going to show up very well on top of darker colours, so I'm going to get a darker colour. I'm going to get this blue here. Right, so, yes, it goes over. And the reason it goes over well is because it's a thin layer and it's a darker oil pastel. So, yes, if you've got one layer, it's going to work. Let's try the Koh-i-Noor. Now this is really hard, look, you can see that. That's struggling to go over the top. Kind of going back on everything I said, isn't it, really, to be honest? But it's going over the top all the same, so you could get some details over that, and I think probably the darker you go, yeah, the darker you go. I think it might be an anomaly with the actual oil pastels I've got, because I think they're probably quite old. But if I was to lay a thicker expanse of oil pastel, I'm going to lay that on there quite thick. What will that do now, I wonder? So I've got that on there quite thick, and blend it down. Of course, it all depends how you blend it as well. That's going to make it a difference, isn't it? Let's see if we can get this blue over the top again. Wow, we are. I'm quite amazed, if I'm being honest. I knew you could, but the problem I have had is that in the past, because these have been so hard, it might just be that they're a little bit softer at the moment, it has actually been quite difficult to put them on top. It has been that they, a bit like these Koh-i-Noor ones, acting like a pencil, it's digging into the oil pastel. If you're lucky and you don't have that thicker layer, you can get the pencil onto the paper and that will show your lines, but it's digging in and really not adhering to the paper most of the time. So you can get this over the top, but you'd have to keep your oil pastel clean. See, you saw there, it just skidded over the top in that part, but I turned it into a clean area. Look, if I do that, it's just doing nothing. Well, very little anyway. But you can then just blend that in or blend it down, whatever it is you want to do. But you'll never get that really dark line like that. So it's kind of, try it, suck it and see if it'll work for you. I think there's going to be moments where it'll work better than others. So it's not going to be an exact science, but it's definitely worth a try. And if you can't do it, then the other techniques that I'm going to come up with in the future, and I'm going to do that at 3,000 subscribers because I have promised, that will then tell you how you can do it in a more pristine way. And that kind of is how I get some of my details. Not all, but some. Right, so in conclusion, it will work, but not always. You are going to have to work out what pastels it will go over and how many layers you're going to have to use to make that happen. When you get my extra technique in the future, that will help a lot. But yeah, it will work, but it's, like I said, it's not an exact science, and you just have to try. I wish I could give you a better, more definitive answer than that. You've seen that it'll work, but it's not going to work fantastically. The pentels, because they're slightly softer than the Koh-i-Noor, are going to give you a thicker line, and sometimes it won't even adhere. But the Koh-i-Noors, because they are harder, a bit like the Pentel Professional ones, they will give you a thinner line, but sometimes they won't adhere because they're too hard, and it all depends if it goes through to the paper. I personally think it's much better than using pencils. I never use pencils. Well, no, that's a lie. I do use pencils, but my God, it's so minuscule the amount of pencil work I would use. I would use it just if I needed a short piece of rope, maybe, and I couldn't do it any other way. But you know, use your cotton buds, use your micro cotton buds. For me, that would be the best way. You could use a conjunction of both, and you know, just have a go. So thank you for that question, Kat. That was brilliant. I just wish I could answer it more definitively. If, like Kat, that you have any particular videos that you've been really inspired or aspired to, or found interesting or helped or whatever, you can give me a super thanks, and that would be really gratefully received, because I get very, very little out of this YouTube channel, and it is quite a lot of hard work. It takes me literally all day to do this and then edit it and put it on, and I'm not the best editor in the world, so I can't imagine how other YouTubers do it. You can do me a super thanks, gratefully received. If you really, really wanted to, you can become a member of the channel. That would be awesome, and then that would be a monthly subscription, and I do it at different levels. I think the first one is £1.99, so it's not a lot, and it helps me, if I'm being honest. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Not sure what that's going to be yet. I'm never really sure what any of them are going to be, but I come up with something, don't I? And I hope I help somebody, no matter who you are or where you are. Anyway, whomever, wherever you are, please have a great day, a great week, and a great year, and I will see you in the next video. Take care for now, and be kind. Bye!